we stepped into a ministry of 80 kids. And of those 80 kids, I can count on one hand how many came from a stable nuclear family. The rest of them came from situations where a lot of them were living with grandparents because mom is in prison. Dad, who knows where he is. Others of them just have one parent at home. They have struggled with their own forms of addictions. They've struggled with abuse. I would estimate that over half of them have never met their parents. And as I'm ministering to these kids, and they're sharing this brokenness with me, it makes me angry. But I brush that anger off. In the last 3 years, I've been involved with talking to the school to remove a teacher from the high school because of the way he had been harassing several of the high school girls. And there were also 2 other teachers who were removed for having affairs with the kids. That makes me angry, but I brush it off. Because what else are you going to do? Language revolving around abuse, self-harm, suicide. Those have become comfortable in my mouth because we have to have these conversations regularly. I don't even want to think about the other things that have happened that we've had to talk to the kids about, but it all makes me very, very angry. And it's gotten to a point where I've not known how to handle or process that anger. It's gotten a little unhealthy to some degree. I've never experienced that much anger in my life. And so as I'm reading this passage and I see Mary at the feet of Jesus, suffering, broken, dominated by death, hurting, and Jesus is moved to fury, I understand why. I understand why, because Jesus is angry at the power that death has on this world. He is angry to see his own children suffering at the hands of death and brokenness. He's weeping because it hurts him to see his children hurting. And this is extremely important. I need everyone to look at me because this is too important. When you are hurting, Jesus is hurting with you. The power of death brings him to anger, and he hurts with you as you hurt. When you are crying, Jesus cries with you. When you are weeping, he weeps with you. You are not alone in your pain, not when you have Jesus. Jesus is not distant in your sufferings. Jesus takes your pain personally. Like a good friend, he walks through suffering with you. And as a sovereign God, he shows you his victory. Jesus takes your sufferings personally. He has a personal agenda with your suffering. And it hurts him to see you hurting. Look at how personally he takes it. Look at verse 34 with me. After being moved to anger, he says, "Where have you laid him?" So Martha, in the previous passage, she comes to Jesus and she says, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." And Jesus offers comfort. He offers hope of salvation. Mary now comes and she says the exact same thing. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. And Jesus does not offer comfort any longer. Instead, it's like a parent who sees their child hurting, and when they see their child hurting, they just immediately spring into action. I think that Jesus is moved to anger, and he says, now it's time to do something. He says, he sees her weeping at his feet, and he says, "Where have you laid the body? Let's go get him." So they said to him, "Lord, come and see." And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?" Now, first, verse 35 is one of the most popular passages in all of Scripture. Everyone boasts about how they have it memorized. If I ask my students in the youth ministry, who here has ever memorized passages of Scripture, guess what they say? Jesus wept. They all know that one, all right? I know Jesus wept. I think because it's so memorized, it's so popular, sometimes we forget the significance of it. We only ever see Jesus weep twice in Scripture, once here and then once at the state of the nation of Israel. He weeps. Now, this is the last Greek word I'm going to teach you. I keep getting my notes confused here. This is the last Greek word I'm going to teach you, and then I promise we're done with the Greek words. I'll let Jared continue to be the master of Greek and Hebrew. When John writes that Jesus wept, he uses a different word than he used for Mary and Martha and the other mourners. For the others, he used that Greek word kaleo, which is the most commonly used Greek word to describe someone weeping. But with Jesus, John uses the Greek word dakrio, which is better translated as burst into tears. This is the only time in the entire Bible that dakrio is used, is right here, which is why this is one of my favorite passages, because there's just so much, it's so rich with so many different words that are so unique just to this passage, embryomame and dakrio. This is the only time in the entire Bible that it's used, and I believe it sets a sharp contrast between the cries of the mourners and the crying of Jesus. Jesus wept because he was overcome with grief for the state of humanity. He wept because he saw the hurting and brokenness of Mary and Martha over their brother, and that hurt him. He wasn't sad that Lazarus was dead. He was about to raise Lazarus. That wasn't a problem. He wasn't sad because of the lack of faith. They told him how much faith they had. Jesus, we know you're powerful enough to do something. He was sad because death had won in that moment. It had conquered, and they were hopeless. And that hurts him.